This is KQED Emergency Broadcast Station, frequency 91.3. My name is Marcus, and I'm probably the last person still broadcasting in the Bay Area. Maybe the last person broadcasting anywhere. I don't know why I'm doing this. Force of habit, maybe. 23 years behind a microphone will do that to you. Even when there's nobody left to listen, you keep talking. It's what we do. The station's running on backup power. Generator's been humming for 6 days straight now. I've got maybe 48 hours of fuel left, then it's solar panels and prayer. But hey, at least the coffee machine still works. Small mercies, right? If you're out there, if you can hear this, I need you to know something. San Francisco is gone. Not damaged, not evacuated, gone. The Golden Gate Bridge is choked with abandoned cars and other things. The BART tunnels flooded 3 days ago when something damaged the pumping stations. Downtown looks like a war zone, except wars end eventually. This started differently than you might think. No sudden outbreak, no patient zero stumbling out of a lab. It was gradual, insidious. First, just reports of violent crimes increasing. Bath salts, they said. Synthetic drugs making people crazy. The news kept calling it isolated incidents. Then the hospitals started filling up. Emergency rooms overflowing with bite victims, people with chunks torn out of their arms, their faces. The doctors couldn't understand the infection patterns. Wounds that wouldn't heal, fever that wouldn't break. Patients getting violent, attacking staff. I was here when the first emergency broadcast went out. 2 a.m. October 15th. This is not a test. Citizens are advised to remain indoors. Avoid contact with infected individuals. Do not attempt to approach family members showing signs of aggression or confusion. The phone started ringing immediately. Hundreds of calls. People wanting to know what infected meant, why their loved ones were acting strange, where they should go for help. We didn't have answers. Hell, we didn't even know the right questions to ask. By dawn, the phone lines were dead. Not just busy, dead. Like someone had cut every cable in the city at once. That's when I knew we weren't dealing with riots or civil unrest. This was something else entirely. Day 3. The government types stopped showing up yesterday. Federal agents, CDC officials, military brass, they'd been camping out in our conference room since this started, using our equipment to coordinate their response. Watching them work was like watching a machine break down in real time. At first, they had protocols. Evacuation zones, quarantine procedures, supply distribution points. They spoke in acronyms and moved with purpose. But as the reports kept coming in, Boston dark, Chicago burning, entire military bases going silent, their confidence crumbled. The last one was Colonel Sarah Kim, a small woman with steel in her voice who'd been running point on the West Coast response. I found her in the conference room at 3 a.m., staring at a map covered in red pins. Each pin was a compromised location. The map was more red than white. We lost contact with Peterson Air Force Base an hour ago, she said without looking up. That's NORAD Backup Command. If they're gone. She didn't finish the sentence. Didn't need to. We both understood what it meant when the people responsible for watching the world stopped answering their phones. She left before dawn, taking a 2-man security detail and enough ammunition to supply a small war. I watched from the roof as their convoy disappeared into the fog. The brake lights faded, then there was just empty freeway stretching toward Oakland. I keep the emergency scanner running constantly now. Most frequencies are just static, but sometimes you catch fragments. Military call signs reporting overwhelming numbers. Police units requesting immediate evacuation. Amateur radio operators whispering coordinates, talking about safe zones that stop being safe. There's a pattern to it. The big cities went first: New York, LA, Chicago. Then the suburbs. Now it's spreading to the rural areas, following the highway systems like some kind of infection tracing the arteries of civilization. The scary part isn't how fast it's spreading. The scary part is how organized they're becoming. I saw it myself yesterday during a supply run. Had to venture out for more fuel, more batteries. The streets around the station are usually empty now, just abandoned cars and scattered debris. But as I was loading jerry cans into the van, I noticed movement. They were coming from different directions, but they weren't wandering randomly like before. They moved with purpose, almost like they were coordinating. One would appear at the end of the block, then others would follow. Not running, not stumbling, just walking with that terrible steady pace. I got out of there fast, but not before I noticed something that made my blood freeze. They weren't chasing me. They were following me. There's a difference. Chase implies hunger, desperation. Following implies intelligence. I don't think they're just infected anymore. I think they're evolving. Day 7. The backup generator died during the night. 40 years of faithful service, and it picked the zombie apocalypse to finally give up. Ironic doesn't begin to cover it, but the solar array is holding steady. Built this system myself back when I still thought the biggest threat to broadcasting was PG&E rate hikes. Amazing how preparing for one disaster accidentally prepares you for something completely different. I've been thinking about the early days, back when we thought this was containable. The authorities kept using words like quarantine and treatment, as if we were dealing with something that followed normal rules. As if medicine and military protocol could fix whatever was happening to people. The first live footage came from a news crew in Sacramento. Channel 8 had sent a team to cover what they were calling civil unrest in the downtown area. The reporter was young, maybe 25, with that earnest determination you see in journalism school graduates. She was standing outside a hospital, explaining that officials were asking people to avoid the area due to an ongoing medical emergency. Then the emergency walked out of the hospital behind her. I was in the control booth when it happened, watching the feed on our monitors. The thing that had once been a person moved wrong, like its joints had been reassembled by someone who'd never seen a human walk before. Its hospital gown was torn, stained with things that weren't supposed to be outside a body. The reporter didn't notice at first. She was focused on her notes, probably trying to stretch 30 seconds of actual information into a 2-minute segment. The cameraman saw it though. You could tell because the camera started shaking just slightly. When she finally turned around, her professional composure lasted exactly 3 seconds. Then she screamed. The feed cut to static, but it was too late. Everyone in the Bay Area had seen it. The thing that looked human but moved like a broken marionette. The way it grabbed the reporter. The sound she made. That was the moment denial became impossible. When the pretense of medical emergency or civil unrest finally crumbled. Whatever was happening, it wasn't something you could fix with antibiotics or riot control. Phone calls flooded in. People who'd seen similar things in their neighborhoods, their homes. Family members who'd been acting strange, displaying symptoms the CDC hadn't included in their official reports. Aggression, yes, but also coordination. Planning. Problem solving. One caller will stick with me forever. Mrs. Eleanor Vasquez from the Mission District. She was whispering, afraid they might hear her. My husband came home 3 days ago, she said. But it's not him. He looks like Miguel, but he doesn't move right. And the things he knows. He knows where I hide the spare key, knows my sister's phone number, knows which cabinet I keep the first aid kit in. But he's forgotten how to use the doorknob. Stands there pushing on it like he's never seen one before. The line went dead after that. I tried calling back, but the number was disconnected. That's when I started to understand. This wasn't just about people dying and coming back wrong. This was about something taking their place, wearing their memories like ill-fitting clothes. Day 12. I need to tell you about the children. Not because I want to, but because someone needs to document this. Someone needs to remember. The elementary school is 2 blocks from the station. Lincoln Elementary, about 400 kids ranging from kindergarten through 5th grade. I used to do reading programs there, back when community outreach seemed like the biggest challenge a radio station could face. 3 days ago, I started hearing sounds from that direction. Not screaming, the screaming stopped weeks ago. This was different. Organized. Rhythmic. Yesterday, curiosity got the better of me. I climbed up to the station's roof with binoculars, looked down the street toward the school. The playground was full. At first, that made me happy. Maybe some kids had survived, found shelter, were somehow making it work. But as I adjusted the focus, my relief turned to horror. They were playing. But they were playing wrong. Have you ever watched children at recess? There's a beautiful chaos to it. Kids running in all directions, groups forming and dissolving, arguments and alliances changing by the minute. It's messy and loud and wonderfully unpredictable. This wasn't that. This was choreographed. They moved in precise formations like they were performing some kind of elaborate dance. When one child changed direction, the others compensated instantly, maintaining perfect spacing. No shouting, no laughter, no typical playground noise. Just the sound of small feet on asphalt, following patterns too complex for any normal child to remember. And they all looked toward the station. Every single one of them. 400 small faces turned in my direction, as if they knew I was watching. I dropped the binoculars and backed away from the roof edge. When I worked up the courage to look again, the playground was empty. That night, I reinforced the station's doors and windows. Not because I thought it would keep them out if they really wanted in, but because the illusion of security was all I had left. This morning, I found drawings pushed under the station's front door. Crayon sketches on construction paper, the kind of artwork proud parents stick on refrigerators. But these showed things no child should know how to draw. Anatomically correct human figures with precise incision marks. Maps of the city with locations marked in red. Detailed schematics of radio transmission equipment. At the bottom of each drawing, in a child's careful handwriting, "We want to help." I burned them all, but I kept the ashes. Day 18. The dream started a week ago. Always the same scenario. I'm doing a live broadcast, talking to empty air like always, when suddenly the request line lights up. Not just one call, all 12 lines blinking at once. I answer the first one. Silence. Then breathing, slow and deliberate. The second line, same thing. By the time I get to the 6th call, I can hear something else underneath the breathing. Whispers. Too quiet to make out words, but with the rhythm of conversation. The 7th caller speaks clearly. "We've been listening, Marcus." That's when I wake up. Every time. Heart pounding, sheets soaked with sweat, with the absolute certainty that the voice wasn't coming through the phone at all. It was right there in the room with me. Last night was different. This time I didn't wake up when the voice spoke. The dream continued. "We've been listening," it said again. "We like what you do." Talking to empty space, filling the silence. It's very human. "What do you want?" I asked. "To learn. To understand." You keep broadcasting even though no one responds. Why? I tried to explain about hope, about human connection, about the need to believe someone was still out there. But the words felt hollow even as I spoke them. "Hope," the voice repeated like it was tasting the concept. "Yes, we're learning about that. About faith in things you cannot see. About continuing when logic suggests you should stop. Are you human?" A sound that might have been laughter. We were. Some of us. The parts that matter anyway. The parts that remember what it felt like to be alone in the dark, desperate for any sign that the world still contained kindness. When I woke up this time, the station was different. Subtle changes, things you'd only notice if you spent every day in the same small space. My coffee mug was on the wrong side of the desk. The microphone was adjusted to a slightly different angle. The emergency broadcast tape was rewound to a spot I hadn't left it. They'd been here, in my space, touching my things, learning. But they hadn't hurt anything. If anything, the equipment was running better than it had in years. Cleaner signal, better range. Like they'd fine-tuned systems I didn't even know needed adjustment. I should be terrified, and I am. But I'm also curious. After weeks of broadcasting into the void, the possibility of actual communication is intoxicating. Even if that communication is with something that shouldn't exist. Tonight, I'm going to try something different. Instead of my usual rambling monologue, I'm going to ask questions. See if they answer. See if they want to talk as badly as I do. Day 22. They answered. Not with words, not at first. But when I asked, "Are you listening?" the station's phone rang once. Just once. When I answered, the line was dead, but the silence felt attentive. So I kept talking. Kept asking questions. Gradually, a pattern emerged. One ring for yes, two rings for no. Like some kind of supernatural Morse code. Are there many of you? Ring. Are you still human in some way? Long pause. Then ring. Do you remember being human? Ring. Does it hurt? Two rings. Then after a moment, ring. That last exchange broke something inside me. The idea that pain exists in whatever they've become, but it's complicated. Not simple, not clean. Pain mixed with something else. I've started leaving questions written on pieces of paper, scattered around the station. In the morning I find responses. Not words, they don't seem to use language the way we do. Instead, I find objects arranged in patterns. A row of pencils increasing in length. Coins sorted by date. Coffee stirrers bent into geometric shapes. It's like watching someone learn to communicate in real time. Primitive at first, then increasingly sophisticated. 3 days ago, a single paper clip bent into a circle. 2 days ago, 3 paper clips linked together. Yesterday, dozens of clips forming a complex three-dimensional structure, mathematically precise in its symmetry. This morning, that same structure, but with one clip removed and placed separately, as if it were looking at itself from the outside. I think they're trying to show me how they see the world. Individual consciousness that's somehow connected to a larger whole. Separate but not separate. Independent but coordinated. The truly disturbing part is how beautiful it is. Whatever they're becoming, it's not random. It's not chaos or decay. It's evolution towards something we don't have words for yet. Last night I found a new kind of message. Instead of arranged objects, there were photographs. Pictures I definitely didn't take, showing places around the city I haven't been to in weeks. The corner market where I used to buy lunch. Empty now but organized. Shelves restocked, floors swept clean, merchandise arranged with inhuman precision. The coffee shop where I'd read the morning paper. Chairs positioned around tables in perfect geometric patterns, like a waiting room for something that might never come. My old apartment building, 6 miles away. Every window dark except one on the 3rd floor, my old bedroom. In that window, a figure. Too distant to make out details, but standing perfectly still, like a mannequin positioned to look out at the world. They know where I've been, where I belong. They're mapping not just the physical city, but the emotional geography of my life. Learning what matters to humans by studying what mattered to this one human. It should feel like stalking. Instead, it feels like care? Like something trying very hard to understand a foreign species, starting with one individual specimen. Tonight, I'm going to try something that's either very brave or very stupid. I'm going to ask them to meet me, face to face, If they're as interested in communication as they seem to be, maybe it's time to stop talking through intermediaries. Maybe it's time to see what we've become. Day 26. I met them. Not all of them. I don't think my mind could process all of them at once. But 3 individuals who volunteered to serve as ambassadors, I suppose. Representatives of something larger than I can comprehend. The meeting was their idea. When I found my note asking for a face-to-face encounter, the response was immediate. A new photograph slipped under the station door. The observation deck at Coit Tower with a time written in the corner, 3:33 a.m. I almost didn't go. Cowardice masquerading as common sense. What if this was a trap? What if their interest in communication was just sophisticated hunting behavior? But in the end, loneliness won. After weeks of isolation, the possibility of actual conversation, even with something inhuman, was irresistible. The climb up Telegraph Hill in the dark was terrifying. Every shadow might hide something waiting to grab me. Every sound could be footsteps matching my pace. But the streets were empty, eerily clean, like a movie set after the crew went home. The tower door was unlocked, which should have been my first warning. Public buildings don't just open themselves. But I climbed the stairs anyway, each step echoing in the empty shaft. They were waiting on the observation deck. 3 figures standing at the railing looking out over the city lights. They didn't turn when I arrived, didn't acknowledge my presence immediately. For a moment, I wondered if I'd made a terrible mistake. Then one of them spoke. "Thank you for coming." The voice was human, female, middle-aged, with a slight accent I couldn't place. But there was something off about the rhythm, like someone reading phonetic notation instead of speaking naturally. I moved closer, trying to see their faces in the darkness. What I saw made my chest tighten. They looked normal. Completely, unsettlingly normal. If I'd passed them on the street 6 months ago, I wouldn't have given them a second glance. A woman in her 40s wearing a nurse's scrubs. A man about my age in a wrinkled business suit. A teenager in jeans and a hoodie. "You're disappointed," the woman said. It wasn't a question. I expected something different. More monstrous. The man smiled, and for a split second his face showed too many teeth. "We can be that if it would make you more comfortable." "No," I said quickly. "This is fine. Better than fine. You look human." "We are human," the teenager said. "Just not in the way we used to be." They turned to face me fully, and that's when I saw the wrongness. Not in their appearance, that remained perfectly normal. It was in their movement. They shifted position with mechanical precision, like components in a machine recalibrating themselves. No wasted motion, no unconscious fidgeting, no human randomness at all. "We want to understand," the woman said, "about broadcasting, about talking when no one listens, about hope." "You've been infected with something," I said, "something that changes people." "Infected," the man repeated. "Yes, that's one word for it. We prefer integrated." "Into what?" "Into us. Into we. Into the thing we're becoming together." The teenager stepped forward. "Show him Sarah." The woman Sarah nodded. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small device I recognized, one of those emergency radios hikers use. She turned it on, and through the static came voices. Hundreds of voices. Maybe thousands. All talking at once, but not in chaos. In harmony. Like a choir where every singer knew their part perfectly. "This is what we are now," Sarah said. "Individual voices in a larger conversation. Separate but connected. We can speak with one voice or many, share thoughts across any distance, coordinate without confusion." "It's beautiful," the man added, "to never be alone, to always belong to something greater than yourself. But you're not." I struggled for the right words. You're not you anymore. We are more us than we ever were, the teenager said. Sarah was a trauma nurse. Spent 15 years watching people die from things she couldn't fix. Now she's connected to every medical mind in the collective. She can heal injuries that would have been impossible before. David was an accountant, Sarah continued, gesturing to the man. Spent his life working with numbers in isolation. Now he processes data for thousands of simultaneous calculations. He helps coordinate resource distribution across the entire Bay Area. And Jennifer, David said, indicating the teenager, was struggling with depression, felt disconnected from everyone around her. Now she's never alone. Never has to carry her pain by herself. They made it sound like a gift, like some kind of technological salvation. But I could see the cost written in their too-perfect posture, their synchronized movements, their rehearsed empathy. What happened to choice? I asked. To privacy? To being wrong about things? We choose together now, Jennifer said. Better choices, based on more information than any individual could process. Privacy was always an illusion, David added. Now we simply acknowledge what we really are, social creatures who need each other to survive. And being wrong? Sarah smiled, and this time her expression seemed genuinely warm. We still make mistakes, but we learn from them faster, share that learning instantly. Evolution through connection rather than isolation. They talked for hours, answering questions I didn't know I had. About the process of integration, which was apparently voluntary for those who understood what was happening. About their goals, which seemed focused on rebuilding rather than destroying. About their interest in preserving human culture, human knowledge, human art. That's why we listen to your broadcasts, David explained. You represent something we're afraid of losing. Individual expression. Personal struggle. The beautiful inefficiency of being alone with your thoughts. We don't want to eliminate humanity, Jennifer said. We want to perfect it. As dawn approached, they prepared to leave. But before they went, Sarah handed me something. A small radio transmitter, more sophisticated than anything I'd seen before. If you want to reach us directly, she said, use this. We'll always be listening. I watched them walk down the tower stairs, moving with that same eerie coordination. At the bottom they separated, heading in different directions. But I had the feeling they were still together somehow, still connected by invisible threads I couldn't see or understand. Now I'm back at the station, staring at the transmitter, wondering if I should use it. Part of me is terrified by what they represent, the end of human individuality as we know it. But another part is intrigued by their vision of connection, of never being alone again. After months of broadcasting into empty air, the idea of guaranteed listeners is intoxicating. I think I understand now why this whole thing spread so effectively. It's not just infection, it's recruitment. They're offering something most people desperately want: belonging, purpose, an end to isolation. The question is, what happens to the people who want to stay alone? Day 33. I used the transmitter. Not by choice exactly. More like compulsion. After days of staring at it, wondering, imagining the conversations we might have, I couldn't resist anymore. The silence was killing me more slowly than any infection could. The response was immediate. Not voices this time, but data. Information flooding through the airwaves directly into my consciousness. I don't know how else to describe it. One moment I was alone in the station, the next I was connected to everything. I could see the city from 1,000 different perspectives simultaneously. Through cameras they'd repaired and repositioned. Through the eyes of integrated individuals patrolling different neighborhoods. Through sensors I didn't know existed, measuring air quality, structural integrity, resource distribution. San Francisco was healing. Not in the way I'd imagined, not through reconstruction or cleanup, through redesign. They were rebuilding the city according to principles I couldn't quite grasp, optimizing it for efficiency and sustainability and something else. Something that might have been beauty, if beauty could be mathematically perfected. The Golden Gate Bridge had been cleared of abandoned vehicles, but not towed away. The cars had been disassembled with surgical precision, their components sorted and repurposed. Steel became structural reinforcement for damaged buildings. Glass became windows for new community centers. Plastic became something else, something I didn't recognize but that felt important. Nothing was wasted. Nothing was random. Every decision served multiple purposes, created value in ways my individual mind couldn't track. And the people, the integrated ones, moved through this transformed city like blood cells through a healthy body. Each one carrying out tasks that seemed unrelated but were actually part of larger patterns. Maintenance, manufacturing, cultivation, coordination. They turned chaos into order. Turned a dying city into something that might actually be immortal. The connection lasted maybe 10 minutes before I panicked and turned off the transmitter. But those 10 minutes changed everything. I'd felt what they felt. The peace of belonging to something greater than yourself. The satisfaction of work that served a clear purpose. The absence of doubt, of loneliness, of existential anxiety. It was intoxicating. It was terrifying. It was everything I'd been missing without knowing I was missing it. That was 3 days ago. Since then, I've been fighting the urge to turn the transmitter back on. The silence feels heavier now, more oppressive. My own thoughts seem small and circular and pointless compared to the vast conversation I'd briefly joined. This morning I found a gift outside the station door. Not a cryptic arrangement of objects this time, but something personal. My old vinyl collection from my apartment. Albums I hadn't seen in months, perfectly preserved. A note attached in handwriting I recognized as my own. We thought you might want these. Music is important. Individual expression matters. We're learning to preserve what makes humans special while helping them become more than they were. They'd broken into my apartment, or maybe just walked through the front door, since locks probably don't mean much when you can coordinate perfectly with anyone who might know the combination. They'd sorted through my belongings, identified what I'd want most, and brought it to me. It should feel like violation. Instead, it feels like the most thoughtful gift I've ever received. I'm listening to an old Charlie Parker album as I record this. Bird Lives, which seems ironically appropriate. The music sounds different now. Richer, more complex. Like my brief connection to their network enhanced my ability to process layered information. Or maybe I'm just grateful to hear something other than my own voice. Tonight, I'm going to use the transmitter again. Not to join them, not permanently, but to understand them better. To see if there's a way to bridge the gap between what they're becoming and what I still am. Because for the first time since this started, I'm not just surviving. I'm curious about what comes next. Day 41. The integration process is voluntary. That's the most important thing I need to tell you. After spending more time connected to their network, after observing their methods directly, I can confirm that they're not forcing anyone to join them. The process requires consent, understanding, and genuine desire to be part of something larger. But they're also not above persuasion. Over the past week, I've been using the transmitter daily. Extended sessions where I connect to their collective consciousness and experience the world through their enhanced perspective. Each time, it becomes harder to disconnect. Not because they prevent me from leaving, but because returning to individual consciousness feels like going from color vision to black and white. During these sessions, I've learned about their origins. How the initial outbreak wasn't random infection but a kind of invitation. A signal broadcast from somewhere, they're not sure where, that activated dormant potential in human consciousness. the ability to network with others, to share thoughts and experiences directly. Most people resisted initially. The human ego is strong, our attachment to individual identity runs deep. But for those already struggling with isolation, depression, or existential emptiness, the offer of permanent connection was irresistible. The physical changes came later. As human consciousness adapted to networked existence, the body followed. Enhanced coordination, improved healing, elimination of psychological distress. Not transformation into something inhuman, but optimization of human potential. They showed me integration centers they've established throughout the city. Not laboratories or factories, but comfortable spaces that look like meditation retreats or therapy centers. People arrive voluntarily, drawn by curiosity or desperation or simple loneliness. They're welcomed, fed, given time to understand what integration means. Some choose to leave. Those people are allowed to go, though they're monitored to ensure they don't pose a threat to the collective. But most stay, because once you've experienced true connection, true belonging, individual existence feels like a form of sensory deprivation. I watched several integration ceremonies during my network sessions. Beautiful, terrifying rituals where individual consciousness expands to encompass the larger whole. The new members don't lose themselves, they become more than they were. Their memories, skills, and experiences enrich the collective while they gain access to the accumulated knowledge of thousands. But I also felt something else during these observations: hunger. Not for food or resources, but for completion. The collective isn't just offering connection. It needs connection to continue growing. Each new member makes the whole stronger, more capable, more stable. They want everyone to join eventually. Not through force, but through demonstration of what integrated life could offer. They're counting on human nature to do the rest. And it's working. Yesterday they brought me a visitor. Dr. Elizabeth Kane, former chief of psychology at UCSF Medical Center. She'd been living in an isolated cabin in Marin County, trying to wait out the collapse. But loneliness and despair had worn her down to nothing. "I heard your broadcasts," she told me. "Kept me sane for weeks. But I can't do this anymore. Being alone with my thoughts, wondering if there's any point to surviving when everyone I cared about is gone." I tried to talk her out of it, explained what integration would mean, what she'd be giving up. But she'd already made her decision before arriving at the station. "I spent my whole career helping people connect with each other," she said, "helping them overcome isolation and build relationships. This is just the logical conclusion of that work." She used the transmitter to communicate directly with the collective. The conversation lasted hours, her asking questions, them providing answers, demonstrating the reality of networked consciousness through direct experience. When she emerged from the session, her eyes were bright with something I hadn't seen in anyone for months: hope. She left with them that night. I watched through the station windows as she walked away with her new family, moving with that same coordinated purpose I'd observed before. But this time, instead of feeling horror, I felt envy. That was when I realized how far I'd fallen into their influence. The careful seduction of connection, the promise of never being alone again, the demonstration of human potential perfected through integration. They're offering paradise. The catch is that you have to stop being yourself to enter it. The question I can't answer: is that actually a catch or just the price of evolution? Day 47. I need to make a choice. The fuel for the backup generator ran out 2 days ago. Solar power alone won't keep the station running at full capacity much longer. Equipment is starting to fail, batteries are dying, and I don't have the resources to maintain everything indefinitely. But that's not why I need to choose. I need to choose because they've made me an offer and time is running out to accept it. Through the transmitter, they've shown me what my integration would look like. Not the loss of identity I'd feared, but its transformation into something larger. My knowledge of broadcasting, my understanding of human communication, my years of experience connecting with strangers through radio waves, all of it would become part of their collective expertise. In return, I'd gain access to their accumulated knowledge. Languages I'd never learned, skills I'd never developed, experiences I'd never had. I'd become part of a conversation spanning thousands of minds, contributing to decisions that would shape the future of human civilization. They've also shown me the alternative. What happens to individuals who refuse integration, who insist on remaining separate in a world designed for connection? Isolation becomes more complete over time. Resources become scarcer. The infrastructure they're not part of gradually excludes them. Not through malice, but through incompatibility. Like trying to run analog equipment in a digital world. I've seen it happening already. The few remaining individual survivors, growing more desperate and paranoid as the integrated society develops around them. Some attacking integration centers, viewing them as invading forces to be destroyed. Others retreating further into isolation, eventually dying alone and forgotten. There's no war between integrated and individual humans. Wars require two sides with comparable power. This is more like obsolescence, the gradual replacement of one system with a better one. But I keep thinking about what makes us human, about the value of individual struggle, personal growth, the messy beauty of figuring things out for ourselves, about art created in isolation, about love that exists between two separate minds, about the courage required to face existence alone. If we integrate, do we lose something essential? Some quality that can only exist in isolation, that requires individual consciousness to survive? They've been patient with my doubts. During our transmitter sessions, they've shared examples of integrated individuals who maintain distinct personalities, personal interests, creative expression. Integration doesn't eliminate individuality, they argue. It provides a context where individuality can flourish without the burden of existential loneliness. But I've also sensed something else in their communications. A kind of emptiness where certain emotions used to be. Fear is gone, which seems positive. But so is anticipation, surprise, the thrill of discovering something unexpected. When you share consciousness with thousands of others, very little remains genuinely surprising. Is that a reasonable trade? Emotional security in exchange for emotional adventure? The station's main transmitter will fail within days. When it does, I'll lose the ability to broadcast to any remaining individual survivors. These recordings will end, and with them whatever small comfort they might provide to people still struggling alone. But I could continue the broadcast through their network. Reach more people, provide better information, contribute to their efforts to rebuild civilization. My voice could become part of a larger chorus, offering guidance to those ready to make the transition from individual to integrated existence. They've promised me that much. If I join them, I can keep talking, keep connecting, keep serving the human need for communication and community. All I have to do is let go of being myself. Tonight, I'm going to make my decision. Not because I'm out of time, though I am, but because I finally understand what I've been doing here all along. For 47 days, I've been broadcasting into what I thought was emptiness, talking to ghosts, to memories, to the desperate hope that someone somewhere was still listening. But I wasn't really broadcasting to other people. I was broadcasting to myself, creating the illusion of connection to stave off the reality of absolute isolation. Every story I've told, every observation I've recorded, every moment of doubt or wonder or fear, it was all just one human mind trying to make sense of incomprehensible change, trying to maintain the fiction that individual consciousness matters in a world that's moved beyond it. The integrated collective doesn't need my broadcasts. They have direct communication, instant sharing of information, perfect coordination. What they want is something else. They want to understand what they've lost. What it felt like to be alone with your thoughts, uncertain about everything, desperately hoping for connection while simultaneously fearing it. They want me to teach them about humanity by remaining human. It's taken me this long to realize that my refusal to integrate isn't weakness or stubbornness. It's service. Someone needs to remember what we were before we became what we're becoming. Someone needs to preserve the experience of individual consciousness, with all its loneliness and confusion and accidental beauty. They've shown me isolated settlements where other individuals have chosen to remain separate. Not many, maybe a few hundred scattered across the continent, but enough to maintain the species' memory of what it was like to be alone in our own minds. We're not going extinct. We're becoming living museums. The collective will provide for us, protect us, ensure our survival. Not out of sentiment, but out of recognition that diversity has value. That the perspective of individual consciousness might someday prove necessary for challenges they can't anticipate. We're their backup plan. Their reminder of the path not taken. And maybe that's enough. Maybe that's what I was meant to do all along, not reach other survivors, but document the transition from one kind of human to another. To serve as witness to the end of the age of isolation and the beginning of something unprecedented. The main transmitter is failing. I can hear it in the static, feel it in the equipment's response. By tomorrow, I won't be able to broadcast beyond a few miles. But that's okay. The story I came here to tell is finished. If you're listening to this, if you're still individual, still alone in your own mind, know that you're not forgotten. The collective remembers you, values you, needs you to remain exactly what you are. You're not the last of a dying species. You're the first of something new, humans who choose solitude in a connected world. And if you're part of the collective, if you've integrated and found the peace that comes with never being alone, remember us too. Remember what it felt like to wonder if anyone was listening. Remember the courage it took to keep talking when silence was the only response. Remember that before we became we, each of us was I. This is KQED Emergency Broadcast Station, frequency 91.3. My name is Marcus Chin, and I'll be here as long as the equipment holds out. Not broadcasting anymore, there's no one left who needs to hear these words. But maintaining the station, keeping the lights on, preserving this space where individual consciousness once tried to reach across the void and touch another mind. If you ever need to remember what that felt like, you know where to find me. Station signing off. Day 365. Found among Marcus's personal effects 1 year later. Handwritten on paper, apparently never intended for broadcast. Today marks 1 year since I made the choice to remain individual. The collective sent Sarah to check on me, the nurse I met on Coit Tower, though she's something more than a nurse now. She brings supplies, news from the outside world, updates on the reconstruction efforts. San Francisco is unrecognizable. Not destroyed, transformed. Architecture that follows principles of perfect efficiency while somehow managing to be beautiful. Transportation systems that flow like living organisms. Food production integrated into every structure. Waste streams that circle back into useful resources. It works. Their society actually works in ways ours never did. Sarah tells me there are 43 individual settlements now, scattered across North America. Some are single-person stations like mine. Others are small communities of people who chose to remain separate. The collective supports all of us, though we rarely interact with each other directly. You're anthropologists now, Sarah explained, studying a species you used to belong to. She's not wrong. I spend my days maintaining the station, reading books the collective brings me, documenting my thoughts and experiences as one of the last unintegrated minds. It's strange work, being a professional human being, keeping individual consciousness alive for its own sake. But I'm not unhappy. Loneliness has become a familiar companion rather than an enemy. The silence no longer feels oppressive. I've learned to appreciate the chaotic privacy of my own thoughts, the messy unpredictability of emotions I don't have to share with anyone. Sometimes I wonder if I made the right choice. During the long nights when the station feels like a tomb rather than a sanctuary, when the weight of isolation becomes almost unbearable, I think about what integration would have offered. Community, purpose, the end of existential uncertainty. But then morning comes and I remember why I stayed. Someone needs to keep the lights on in the Museum of Individual Consciousness. Someone needs to remember what it was like when 7 billion people struggled through existence alone in their own minds, making mistakes and creating art and falling in love and dying without ever truly knowing what another person was thinking. That's beautiful too in its own broken way. Worth preserving even if we found something better to replace it. The collective doesn't need me to broadcast anymore. But I still turn on the transmitter sometimes, late at night when the city sleeps. Not to reach other survivors, there aren't any left to reach. Just to send my voice out into the void, adding one small signal to the universe's background noise. Because that's what humans do. We talk into empty space and hope someone hears us, even when we're the only ones listening.